Welcome to CloudSec Network. Today we'll be discussing how to integrate SonarQube with Jenkins. Jenkins and SonarQube are two powerful tools. SonarQube is used for code quality checks, while Jenkins is a powerful CI/CD automation solution. By the end of this video, you'd have these two tools running as Docker containers on your local system. And all this will be made possible with the help of Docker Compose. My name is Emmanuel Okon, and I'm a certified DevSecOps engineer with multiple years of experience consulting for several organizations across several industries. Let's get started with the demo. So we have Jenkins, an open source automation server that supports several plugins. Jenkins can practically be used for almost any use case. I mean, almost any. So you can see it can be used for continuous integration and continuous delivery. In this particular case, we're actually using it for code scanning and code quality checks on any source code available, right? And then the installation process for Jenkins is actually quite seamless, quite straightforward. Particularly, we can actually see Jenkins has a Docker image, and with that Docker image, you can set it up as a container and run it on any infrastructure, either on the cloud or even on-prem. Also, Jenkins operates a master agent architecture where you have a master that orchestrates tasks and also an agent that will go ahead to execute these tasks. In addition with Jenkins, there is SonarQube on the other end that does the actual code quality check. So Jenkins is more like the manager, right, that then controls the SonarQube scanner to go ahead to do the code quality checks. And SonarQube supports several programming languages. It supports Java, JavaScript, as many programming languages, and it's actually versatile. It's a very, very popular solution. So right now, we're going to navigate to our GitHub repo that has all our resources. So over here, if you navigate to the training resources repo under the CloudSec Network accounts, you would see a directory for DevSecOps, you'd see for Sec Automation. If you go through DevSecOps, you'd see all the resources. Particularly what we have here is the installation guide for Docker Compose, which would come in handy. We also have the Jenkins file script, which we are going to edit. This would also come in handy. Then we also have the Docker Compose file. Now I have my terminal open. So this is actually an Ubuntu server on the cloud. So first things first will be to make sure that we are able to update all our packages. So this will just take a few seconds and then that's done. So that by the time we're trying to install Docker and we're trying to install Compose too as well, it's going to fetch the updated requirements, like the up-to-date artifacts from our repos. So we'll go ahead and also use this command apt install docker.io to then get Docker installed. It will tell me this, I would say yes and proceed. Then after we've done that, once Docker is installed, you can confirm if Docker is installed by running the docker-v docker version command to check that Docker is installed. I will navigate now to the guide and copy the script for installing Docker Compose on Ubuntu. So I'll copy this out and run it on my machine. So I've copied it out, and then once it's copied out, I would paste and then run. It will download the latest version of Docker Compose. I will then go ahead and make the Docker Compose executable with this command. So this will make it executable, and then that's done. And then finally, I will confirm that Docker is now installed. So it's as simple as that. Docker Compose version, and let's see. So Docker Compose is installed. So let's go straight into creating our YAML file for the Docker Compose. So the YAML file is simply just a configuration file for the Docker Compose. Now I will switch back to my training resources where we would have the Jenkins file, the Docker Compose file. So if you click on the Jenkins-SonarQube Docker Compose.yaml file, you would see all the configuration we'll be using during this section. So I'll click on the copy command, or you can simply just select all the text here and then copy. So once this is copied, I'll take this over to the terminal, paste it here and save it. I have it pasted now. I'll go ahead and save and then do this to confirm that it got actually saved. Okay, so this is the file now. So now that I have this file, all I simply need to do is to start the containers. To start it, I'll use the docker compose up-d command. So let's run that. When we run this command, it will go ahead and pull the latest image from the Docker registry for SonarQube and Jenkins. So it's going to be downloading this. As you can see, it's over 800 MB for SonarQube and then over 284 MB for Jenkins. Make sure you have space, make sure you have a good internet connection, and also make sure that the ports for Jenkins and SonarQube are opened. So once it does that, it will already go ahead and start the containers, start the networks and all that was created. So I'll come over here to check what has been created and do docker compose ps. Doing this, I will see, okay, Jenkins was created 17 seconds ago. SonarQube was also created 17 seconds ago. So let us actually take a brief while to just go through some of the configurations for what we set up. So you can see I've defined my services in the Docker Compose file. For Jenkins, we are running it on port 8080 as mentioned, and then we specified a volume. And then we've also said Jenkins should restart always. So in case Jenkins needs to download plugins to update itself for some reason or even failed due to a crash, we want it to restart, right? Without us having to come to manually get it started. We also have SonarQube with 4 volumes for all the configurations, the logs, and then the data that SonarQube will be creating. And then SonarQube is running on what? 9,000. Then we have the volumes that we're attaching to our containers for both Jenkins and SonarQube. So that's all that's in this configuration file. So now that we have both services running, let us go to our browser to view the services. I have my browser opened. I will then proceed to put in the IP address for the server. So I would have to specify the port for either Jenkins or SonarQube. So let's start by configuring SonarQubes. So the port for SonarQube is 9000. I'll put that in and I should be presented with a login page. So the login page would require me to put in the default credentials, which you should all be aware of. So if you check the documentation, you'd see the default credential is actually admin. So I'll put that into login and to request that I change that password. So once I put admin, I'll be required to put in a new password. So I'll put in the old password first and then the new password. You can practically put in any password of your choice. This is just my server, so I would actually show my password. So this is Apple123, but please use a secure password. I'll go ahead and then update. So once I do update, I'll be presented with this screen. I'll go ahead to create a local project. So you go over here, you see create a local project. So you can give it a name. Let's give it CSN and let's give the branch to be master. So be very careful. Be very much aware of what name you are giving your project, what name and what key you are giving your project, because we are later going to use this name and key in configuring our Jenkins pipeline. So be very much aware of what you use here. I'm going to be using CSN, CloudSec Network, but if you want to use something else, go ahead and put that in here. I'll go ahead and click on next and then use the global settings. The global settings is at the default, so use the global settings and you will be fine. And then create the project. Now, with the project created, you can actually see a couple of options to integrate with GitHub Actions, Bitbucket pipelines, Azure pipelines, GitLab CI. But really, we just want to do this locally and actually do this with Jenkins because of the integration we're trying to set up. So I'm going to leave that, not select any. Instead, what I need to do is to configure SonarQube for Jenkins to be able to communicate to it. So if Jenkins needs to communicate to um, SonarQube, aside just knowing the address for SonarQube, it also would require an authentication token. Now you go to administration at the top, you click on administration and then navigate to security. On the security tab, there's a drop down. You click on that drop down and then you see users, groups, global permissions, and permission templates. We're interested in the users. So click on users. There's only one user right now, which is the admin user that we're currently logged in with. Now we need to be able to create an authentication token for this admin user. That authentication token will then be leveraged by Jenkins to communicate with SonarQube. So if you go over here, you would see tokens. Under the tokens column, you click on that menu icon. Once you click on that menu icon, you see the opportunity for you to select a name. So I would go ahead and just say the name of my token can be auth token because it's an authentication token. I'll say call it auth token, and then we can leave it at the minimum expiration date, which is 30 days. So I'll set it at 30 and do generate. Once I do generate, I'll copy my authentication token. Make sure you copy it because you are going to use that when you're configuring Jenkins. So I'll just copy it right now. It will be in my clipboard and I'll paste that in when I'm configuring Jenkins. So I can close this out now. So once this is closed out, I can now navigate to Jenkins. So I copy the same URL, go to another tab, but this time around, I'm expecting that Jenkins should be running on 8080. I then insert that 8080 and then I should be presented with a login interface. Before you can get started with Jenkins, you need to be able to unlock it, right? So Jenkins would require you to have an administrator password. However, this administrator password is inside of the container itself. So that means that we need to be able to access the container or access the server or anywhere you have Jenkins installed to retrieve that admin password. So I'll go ahead to do that. Now I am back to my terminal. So if I do Docker PS, I would see the container where I'll see CSN Jenkins, I'll see CSN SonarQube, and then I'll see them running for 8 minutes, which is pretty much fine. So I would want to be able to have SSH access into the Docker container specifically for Jenkins to get my admin password. What I'll do is use this command. There's a docker exec command. So you type in docker exec and then you type in -it, then you specify the name of the container you want to have access to, then Jenkins. So when you have access to that container, what do you want to do? I just want to display, so I'll use the cat command, display the content of this part, which part is gotten from the URL or the location that is on Jenkins for you to unlock your password. So you copy that URL and then you do cat that URL or cat that location to get the password. So once I do that, I see the admin password for Jenkins. So now that it's there, I would also make sure that I copy that out and then use that to unlock Jenkins. I have my admin password copied out from my terminal. I'll proceed to paste that password over here and then go ahead to press continue. So once I do that, I'll just need to set up username and password. So you will then also see two options: install suggested plugins or install select plugins to install. I don't want to have to start selecting several plugins. So whatever Jenkins would recommend for me, I'll go ahead with that. And actually, those plugins will be very useful because it will come with most of the popular plugins out there. For example, Git, especially, that you would need to use in your pipelines while trying to configure your automation. Once the plugins are finished installing, you would see the interface to put in your first user. So I'll put the username for that as admin, and then the password should be something secret. I would confirm the password. Actually, Don't mind me. I'm actually still just using Apple 123, but please don't do that. Full name admin. Email can just be tests at cloudsecnetwork.com. So use your own email address, your own details over here. I'll then do save and continue. Once I do save and continue, it will show me the Jenkins URL. I'll confirm that and then finish. So once I'm done, I'll be presented with the interface for Jenkins, right? So I can see over here the dashboard, I can see manage Jenkins. So as I said, we'll need to configure Jenkins, right? A couple of more steps. So let's go ahead and do manage Jenkins. So first things first, Jenkins needs a plugin, right? To be able to talk to SonarQube. So as I said, Jenkins is a versatile tool, but then for almost anything you want to do with Jenkins, you can see there are available plugins for you to leverage. So if you go over here, you'll see this is actually the plugin we're going to be using, called the SonarQube scanner. So you can see the URL over here. However, if you actually just go to manage Jenkins and then you then go to plugins, you would see um, the same SonarQube plugin. So I would go over here to plugins and then click on available plugins to see what you have already. I will then go ahead and then for available plugins, I will search SonarQube. So SonarQube shows up. I'll click on the icon by the left, the box by the left. Once I click on that, I'll then go ahead to select install. So this is going to install um, SonarQube scanner for us. This is pretty much fast, and then yeah, it's done. So once that is done, you can choose to restart Jenkins. But I won't restart Jenkins because I really don't have any job running, so it's fine for me to just proceed. I will return back to my dashboard and then proceed to then set my credential. So we don't want to hard code the credential for the Sonar token, that's the authentication token of SonarQube, into our pipeline. So instead, we'll come to Jenkins and leverage its credential management system. So if you come to Jenkins, you'll see under security, you'll see credentials. So select credentials and then click on global. Once you click on global, you see the option to add credential. So there are a couple of options. You see username and password, username with private key, file, text, certificate. I'll just go with the text option, the secret text option, because that's really what we want. So I'll put in that secret over here. I have pasted the secret. I can then give it a name. Let's give it the same name, which is auth token. And then the description can be left blank. We've created our credential. Now we will need to also register SonarQube on Jenkins. As always, I'll navigate back to the dashboard, right? So that we always know how to return back. Always navigate back to the dashboard. Once you've navigated back, you click on Manage Jenkins and then you click on System. System is under System Configuration. You click on System. Once you click on System, because you've gone ahead to install the SonarQube scanner, you are going to see more configurations than usual. So specifically, you'd see if you scroll down, you just need to keep on scrolling down. It's actually down below. So you keep on scrolling down until you see a part for SonarQube. So if you're finding it hard to locate, I will just go ahead and just search SonarQube. Okay, so that brings it up for me faster. And then I'll see SonarQube. So yes, you'd want to check environment variables because we don't want anything to be hard-coded, right? I'll select environment variables and then go ahead to add the SonarQube installation. So what this is simply doing is just specifying the SonarQube, the location of SonarQube, and then that's it. So the location currently is, we can see is that IP address we already accessed previously. We need to give it a name. The name would be Sonar. So once we give it the name of Sonar, we then come over here to then paste in the URL. So I'll go over here, copy the URL for Sonar Cube and then paste it into this section. So I'll remove everything else to just keep it at just the URL. So you can see default is usually localhost, but now in this case, we can use localhost, but in this case, we'll just specify the actual IP address. Now we can then select the authentication token. So remember, we already added this to Jenkins, so we can go ahead and select it over here. After we've selected that, all you just need to do is to click apply, and then once it's applied, it will show you that it's been applied, and then you click save. After you are done configuring your global settings and registering SonarQube, you would also need to configure SonarQube under the tools settings. So there are two places where you would need to configure SonarQube. You would first of all need to configure it under the system settings, and then you would also need to configure it under the tools settings. So we've done for the system, we would go ahead and do for tools. I would select tools. Once I select tools, I will see a couple of options. I will see Maven configuration, Git installations. I will scroll down and I will also see SonarQube scanner installations. So I'll select that. Ensure that you use the same name. You can see using the same name is very important. So I would also use the same name here. And then you can leave this version as the latest. You can select any one you want to use. I will leave it as the latest and then save. So on doing that, you've reached almost the end. All you simply just need to do is to create your pipeline job. So I'm back to the dashboard. I'll select new item. Once I select new item, I'll click on pipeline. Let's give our pipeline a name. We can call it Sonar Security Scan. After specifying that, you can then click on OK. You would see a couple of more settings like discard old builds, allow concurrent builds, and many more. However, we are not really interested in that for now. All we'll do will be to navigate to the left-hand side and select pipeline. So on clicking pipeline, it takes us down to the pipeline scripts section. So if you remember, we already have a Jenkins pipeline in our training resources. So you can navigate back to the training resources, copy the pipeline script over there, and edit it to suit your own use case. So I would copy mine from the repository and then come back to Jenkins and then paste it there. So we'll just go through some of the important configurations in this pipeline script. First, you have the GitHub repository. So this GitHub repository is a vulnerable repo. In fact, you can see it over here. So it's a totally insecure web application project. It has a couple of vulnerabilities ranging from SQL injection, several injections, several improper certificate validation, hard-coded credentials, brute force, so several things. Okay, we are going to use SonarQube to scan the code and see which vulnerabilities that we can pick up. So let's go back to our pipeline. Now, back to our pipeline, we'll also see where we are configuring the name of the tool as Sonar. So this is why we had to make the name consistent. So if yours was different, then also make sure that you change it here. In addition, we would also need to go ahead to specify the same name here under with SonarQube environment. Make sure it's the same name. And then finally, we then have the project key and project name. For project key and project name, we are going to be using CSN, CloudSec Network, because this is also what we use as a project name and key when we're setting up a local project on SonarQube. So because we are also use that same name, we would use CSN here. Once you are done with this, you go ahead and you click on save. On clicking on save, you go ahead and you see the left hand side, you would see build now. Build now is what you would use to run your scan on the source code. So if you click on build now, the pipeline would get started. So you can click on build now, and on clicking that, you will see that the job will get started, and you can navigate down to under the build section and click on the builds, which is asterisk or #1. You click on that. On clicking on that, it will show you details about the build started by user admin, and then this has spent 2 minutes and all that. I will scroll down to the console output and click on that. Once I click on the console output, I will see details about the scan. Okay, I'll see details about the scan. So if I scroll up a bit, you'll see details like started by user admin, running on Jenkins, home directory, and a couple of other details. It also cloned the repository. So the script is done. Now that the script is done, we can head over to SonarQube to see the output of our scans. So we can see, okay, passed, right? And then we can then see a couple of security issues. We can see some issues around reliability, some issues around maintainability, and also many more. So let's click on some of the security issues. We can see 5 highs. One thing I like with SonarQube is that it goes ahead to explain the vulnerabilities in details. So you see something like don't disclose flag secret keys. If you click on that, it will show you the portion of code that was affected, right? It will also even go ahead to give you the remediation for that. Very important. Let's look at another vulnerability. This one is around server certificate validation. So probably using a self-signed certificate, which definitely is not secure. So it has raised that as an issue. So there are several other issues, right? And with SonarQube, we're able to spot these issues. So if you've been able to follow through with this section and you have finally reached this stage, then I would say congratulations, right? So we've been able to now integrate SonarQube with Jenkins. Anytime there is a new change, you can go to Jenkins and run a new scan, and then you would see any new vulnerability that SonarQube will pick up.